So I'm usually not the one that goes out of his way to defend an evil monopoly, but I've been seeing a lot of slander towards the iPad Pros this year for some reason. So today I saw this video by Luke Miani which covers a lot of what people have been saying about the iPad. But before we get into that, I have no problems with Luke Miani. I'm just trying to respond to a few points that were raised in his video, and if you haven't watched it already, I would highly recommend that you watch that video first so I don't end up misrepresenting his views in any way possible. So he opens his video with this community poll, and I obviously cannot deny the results of this poll, but this is a community of budget-conscious techies that primarily use MacBooks.
And on stage at the iPad's introductory keynote, Steve Jobs laid out the vision for the iPad as a product segment. It was sort of a hybrid device between the iPhone and the MacBook.
And honestly, iPad Pros are sitting right in the middle of those two categories.
It's going to have to be better at these kinds of tasks.
I would argue that the iPads are definitely better than an iPhone or a Mac at photos, videos, and definitely ebooks. The iPads are at least as good as the iPhones for music, and as far as email is concerned, it is definitely better than an iPhone. It might or might not be better than a MacBook depending on what app you use. But I do concede that the arbitrary requirement to only allow WebKit-based browsers has kind of ruined the internet browsing experience on this very sophisticated device.
But this thing has absolutely stood the test of time. The problem is, after pulling off this masterpiece, what has really happened?
So iPads haven't changed since 2018, right? But people still keep buying them. The sales are higher than they were prior to 2018, which I think is a sign that iPads are not dying just yet. And I don't want to ignore the fact that the last 2 quarters the sales have gone down drastically, but there could be external factors affecting that change.
Apart from that, oh, it's got an ultra-wide camera that I've literally never used. What is new about this?
So I do have an M2 iPad Pro, and I do agree that cameras could use a little bit of slimming down and nobody would even notice. But if we want to know what meaningfully has changed since 2018, we can start looking at the center stage camera. You can watch this video that I watched when the iPad Pros were originally released, and this artist kind of breaks down how the hover feature completely changes his workflow. And you cannot deny that the newer iPads are obviously faster, where this photographer tried to compare this 2018 iPad with one of the newer iPads, and there was a drastic difference. And I understand that he was using it for some very complicated tasks.
The spotlight seemed to be quite a bit slow on this. Not yet. Now I can open it. Huh.
And you wouldn't notice that unless you use the iPads on a day-to-day basis, because then those little hiccups will start adding up and start bugging you when you have one of the older iPads. So this is from personal experience. I've used the LiDAR sensor to visualize how an assembly line would look in a small room with my process engineers. Yes, I could have used an iPhone because the iPhone Pros also have the LiDAR sensors, but the iPhone screen size is not ideal for collaborative engineering problems. Do you know what I mean? And I understand that these are niche cases, like too niche maybe, but it's also not any more or less niche than the 8K media encoders that exist on the MacBook Air devices.
I spent like $1,500 on this thing, and it was not worth it at all.
We keep focusing on this $1,500 12.9-inch iPad Pro with the Magic Keyboard. That's not the only option. That's kind of like akin to an M2 Max Mac Studio or like the Mac Pro. Most people don't need that kind of device. Most people will be happy with an iPad Air.
When you put these things side by side, an M2 MacBook Air and a 12.9-inch iPad Pro, I cannot justify getting this iPad.
But is it competing with the 12.9-inch iPad Pro? Most people that are considering the M2 MacBook Air do not care about 120 Hz. They do not care about an XDR display. And for the Magic Keyboard, I'm not going to defend that. That is a trash accessory, and you should never buy a $300 keyboard as an accessory to your $700 iPad.
Here, but just interacting with this feels clunky and weird. I don't enjoy it at all.
Okay, coming from a Windows PC, maybe the snapping just came naturally to me, but I can see how a MacBook user can get frustrated when they switch to an iPad device.
Safari to be smaller, I can layer them on top of each other. I don't necessarily need to see both at the same time, but I can click back and forth between them extremely easily.
There is Stage Manager, and Stage Manager has improved drastically over a 1 year period. There's a lot of complaints that people had with iPadOS 16, and majority of them have been addressed in the iPadOS 17 release.
With the same chip, but with a less functional operating system.
So when I decided that I'm going to make a response video to Luke's video, I took notes on his video on this device. This is how those notes look. There's no version of reality where you can take those kind of notes on a MacBook device. The iPad is a limited MacBook, but it also allows you to separate the keyboard from the screen and make it a lot more portable. iPads also have full support for shortcuts and automation that doesn't exist on macOS. There's also this little niche fact that if you paid for an iPhone app, that is also available on your iPad.
There's a saying, don't fix what ain't broke, and never has it been more true than with macOS versus iPadOS. This is just how the Mac has worked for literally 40 years. There's no real reason to think that we need to overcomplicate it by having all of these gestures and swipes and a side tray and a split screen. It still confuses me.
And for the if it ain't broke part, I would argue that the traditional Windows-based multitasking is kind of broken for a touch-based input device. Case in point, Windows 11 tablets. And iPadOS would function like Windows 11 does if Apple didn't try to fix the traditional multitasking for touch-based devices.
The fact that Apple isn't even updating this product with any amount of regularity or giving it any care when they do update it.
To be honest with you, do we really need to update the hardware of the iPad? I don't see a lot of people complaining about lacking features on their iPad devices that needs to be updated like they were doing for the iPhone with the USB-C port for the longest amount of time. And add to that, Apple also doesn't need to be aggressive with the iPads because there's literally no competition for the iPads on the market today.
I mean, what's the rumor right now? An OLED display?
But if it does come out with an OLED panel, I would imagine they will get standby mode. And adding standby mode will completely change how you use your iPad because you have an always-on display.
I'm not spending $1,500 so I can go from mini LED to OLED.
Yes, but that's on the high end. And you don't know, you might even be able to use your older accessories paying only for the price of the iPad.
Luke, how do I fix the iPad? What can I do to make this product worth your time and money? I don't know what it needs. It needs better software, but I don't know what they should change.
I have a few things I could ask for. I could ask for more than 4 apps on Stage Manager. I could ask for a clamshell mode where the iPad screen turns off when you connect it to an external display. I could ask for multiple audio channels where 2 different applications could play audio at the same time, but the output would come out of 2 completely different devices. And while we're at it, can I get some emulation so maybe we can turn this very amazing, very powerful device into a retro gaming console as well? Maybe we can put Xcode on it so you could develop your iPhone applications on the iPad. And finally, for automation, can we get triggers from third-party applications, maybe third-party hardware? See, there is room for improvement, and some of these could be hardware dependent. The iPad Pro models are not much different from the iPhone Pro models. They are not meant for everybody. Anyways, thank you everybody for watching. No hate to Luke, love that guy. Just wanted to clarify a few points. If this video helped you in any way possible, please hit the like button. And if you did not like this video, please let me know in the comments what feedback do you have for me so I can improve these videos. I'm trying really hard and I need some feedback. Thank you everybody for watching. This is Keith.